Morning, everyone. We'll just hang in a few minutes as people sort of settle in and come on. Just to make you aware, feel free to use the chat. We'll be monitoring the chat and Q&A sessions that's going on and pass those on to our speakers and try to get back to you with anything like that. So let's hang on for a few minutes here. We have Aracelli on board. We have David Peterson from Microsoft. Ready to go. We'll just give it a few minutes before we start, and I'll pass it over to your host, Aracelli.
Okay, thank you, Mark.
We'll just give it a few more minutes, Aracelli.
Okay.
All right, Aracelli, I've made you the presenter now. It's all yours.
Okay, thank you, Mark. Good morning, everyone, and welcome to our first virtual COVID-19 Business Response Hackathon. My name is Aracelli Tumbalobos. I'm from Peru. I am a PMC student from the Seneca College from the program of Project Management Information Technology, and I am the director of the student experience for this hackathon. And we are so happy to have you here right now. There have been months of work with all of our committee and all of the organization. We are really, really, really thankful for everyone who has been helping us through this journey. And I think this will be really, really good for all the students and the participants who are right now with us. My team and all the people who is behind this huge event are so excited to see by the end of this week for helping businesses during this hard time of COVID-19 crisis. My main objective as director of the student experience here is to make the students experience as interactive and wonderful as I can and help them to enjoy this amazing event full of innovation, technology, and brilliant ideas. I think all the attendees and all the participants will do their best. Hackathons are good experience to connect with other people, work in teams, gain experiential learning about project management, system analysis, design, practice coding, enhance your resume, have your voice heard, help a world, the world may be a better place, and especially to have fun. I want to focus in this part to have fun during these whole months. I know students are so worried about making a big good impression to all the our sponsors, but I think they will do really good. So don't worry, you are here to learn. Well, hackathons have a competitive element. Most of the participants will improve their skills and the main objective of this is to have a great experience. So beginners will benefit as much as seniors, as grads, because hackathons open participants' eyes to their true potential and help to set their goals. We know that the COVID crisis has come to change the way we work, we study, how we run business, and even though how we have social interaction among our lovely ones. This is the reason why the Seneca COVID-19 hackathon is gathering more than 430 students all over Canada and abroad. It's amazing. We have more than 400 students, all of them excited to showcase their innovative solutions and problem-solving skills in front of industry leaders. Now, our students have the opportunity to create new solutions that business need and the investors want. Our hackathon is divided into 9 challenges that will be called as business resilience, healthcare, human resources, hospitality and personal services, virtual classrooms, contentless payments, and much more. All of this information, don't forget to our participants, it's on their own team challenges teams on our Microsoft Teams. So, and they can contact also their sponsors liaisons to gather this information. By the end of the session, I will put some links in the chat so you can gather that information. We also are really happy to have major sponsors, and we want to thank you for all the support that you have given us during this month of organization. Without them, we won't be here. They are Seneca Alumni, Act2Change, Sightline Innovation, Educity, Cormark, Roche, TechGens, Thinking North, CPOS, Skill Squirrel, RBC, Lafarge, The Market Herald, and TPMA. All of our teams registered in each challenge set will receive mentorships from these industry leaders during this hackathon week that will last. We will also comment that we will have 2 rounds of judging and prizes. Our first round will determine the winner of each challenge set, and each prizes will depend on them. Winners will also go to a second round to determine the overall winners. In addition, top solutions will be selected by Steve Sign of Thinking North to present their projects to 100% of Bay Street investors. That is a big opportunity for you, all of our participants right now. This, I think, will be more exciting than maybe winning the overall prize, because you may have an opportunity to show your solution to really good investors. Moreover, also our faculty members and Dean from Seneca College will be on the lookout for projects which have potential to become Seneca Innovation and Applied Research projects. As part of the hackathon, we have scheduled great keynote sessions today and on Friday with amazing keynote speakers that will let us know how we can help business who are experiencing problems due to the COVID-19 crisis. So that is why it's my pleasure to introduce you David Peterson, Chief Architect of Microsoft Canada, who has been helping large organizations adopt and implement Microsoft solutions for 20 years. In the past 5 years, his major focus has been in the IoT space, helping leading automotive manufacturers provide connected vehicle solutions. As a chief architect, David has global responsibility to deliver the most challenging technical engagements, identify architect readiness requirements, and engage with the local community. David was also the CTO for Microsoft Services Canada for 5 years, with the national responsibility for defining technical strategies and big tech solutions, growing the business and fostering technical communities. Let's welcome, please, David Peterson.
Hello and good morning, everyone. Thank you. Aracelli, is it my turn to start in now?
Yes, please, David, you can start if you are ready.
Okay, perfect. Thank you so much. Let me just share my screen. Mark, if you can make me a presenter. I think you actually did that. Thank you.
You're presenter, David.
Excellent. Just doing a quick check there. Can everyone see my
Perfect.
screen and hear me okay?
Yep.
Let me actually turn on my video maybe. That should also be a good thing.
Yes.
Video, there we go. Excellent. Okay, well, thank you, everyone. I appreciate it. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, wherever you may be in the world. I know these interesting times have brought us together from across the world, which is excellent to see. And I appreciate your time and joining into this excellent event that Seneca College is throwing here. And I'll talk later about what hackathons are to us here at Microsoft. But I'm privileged and thankful to be able to talk to you today about some of the experiences I've had. What we're seeing in the workplace, and what is the opportunity ahead for this group of people. I must admit, I've talked to Mark for several years now on working with students, and it is definitely a passion of mine. I personally have graduated from Durham College in Oshawa. And I can't underestimate, I guess, the importance and the level of experience that gave me in order to get into the workplace. Definitely things have changed. I graduated in the early 90s. I've been doing software development and architecture designs for companies for almost 30 years now in the field, 20 years now at Microsoft. So at Microsoft, I'm, as Aracelli mentioned, I'm a chief architect. And what that means is I'm actually part of a division of Microsoft called Microsoft Services. Microsoft Services is part of our field section, which is working directly with our customers day to day. So I work with customers, helping them implement their mission critical solutions. Making sure that we're able to help them achieve their business goals and learning from them and being able to apply technology to their space. So I am a frontline individual working with them, and then I'm also a conduit into our product development teams, mainly out of Redmond, but there are other areas around the world as well. I've gotten firsthand, and I've seen a lot of things over the past 30 years as to what it takes. And I must admit that the last several months has been a complete eye-opener to the opportunity and also, the ability for organizations to change and adopt new things. So as much as I think that there is obviously there's a great challenge in the society today. I think for this group, especially, graduates coming out of the school, there's a huge opportunity. And I look forward to kind of sharing some learnings and some of the things we're seeing in the industry that maybe can kickstart you as part of your hackathon here, or even as you grow into your career. Just I want to talk through that a bit. And we'll, if we'll have any questions, if we have time at the end, I'll be happy to answer any of those as well. So if we look at the industry as a whole, it's a couple of stats at the top. It's really interesting. A couple of these numbers pop out to me as a technology industry person, and kind of working directly with our customers. And if you look at even just the first ones, only 12% are actually ready and are able to support services in as the impact from coronavirus. If I were to think through who that is, and given all the companies across Canada and the world that I work with, I would have to think that those are mostly technology firms. And I have several examples from financial services, from government and public sectors that are just, struggling to keep up with some basic things that a lot of us in the technology space take for granted. So there's a lot of opportunity there in terms of readiness of organizations. And I think that the other one I'll just kind of pick on here is that is the second one, which is I was actually quite impressed. It's 52% that people are feel prepared around cybersecurity. And the thing is that we've been working with cybersecurity as an industry for many, many years, and we've done many keynotes with Seneca and beyond to talk about cybersecurity in the workplace. So we're making good progress there. So that's a little bit of a silver lining, but there's still lots of opportunity, obviously, where only 50% are within range. So there's some really interesting stats here that you can read. The one other thing that's really important that I think people are working with is kind of the employee side of things as well. It's not just on the business side. So if we look at if we drill down into individual companies and what are they trying to solve as they come into this new normal that we're facing. These are some of the more categorization of things that we're looking at. And again, I'll just pick out a couple that are really interesting here, right? So new digital business model, sorry. This one is really interesting because, I'm sure all of us have come across, how do we do curbside delivery, or how do we pick up new things, or do doctors and things like that. There's every single organization is changing their models, trying to find new ways to communicate with their customers, support them, do whatever it is that their business is. So there's lots of opportunity to use your imagination and creativity, things that can come out of these types of hackathons, to opportunities to improve on digital business models. Because yes, we will go back to some norm, but it definitely will not be back to the previous way. So how do we continue down these new digital business models? It's a huge opportunity. But on the other hand, I think that the other opposite end is really, really as important, which I like to talk about is the employee well-being side of things. Myself, I have been in this field now, as I mentioned, for 20 years. When I started off at Microsoft in the early 2000s, every single day I went to a customer. I got up, I traveled across the city, went to my customer, sat in their offices. And now, if I fast forward 20 years, I am not there for the most part. In fact, I'm typically home, outside of, this situation where I'm home all the time. I would still say that 80+% of my time is still sitting at home doing my work. So we've really, really shifted from in-person to, remote work. And employee well-being in that angle is extremely important. How do we separate work and life? How do we make sure that we can still get the most productivity out of employees while helping them balance, wherever the situation may be for them from working in their new norm? And, being home for so many years actually has its own, you're not seeing as much people physically. You talk to people like this on the phone all the time, which is fantastic. But, sometimes that emotional connection and well-being is hugely important as well. So we don't want to underestimate kind of the human aspect of this as well, which is something I think is a huge opportunity for us ahead. So, if we look at what is our new reality, right? Everything is changed. Nothing is going to be any different than, in back to the normal side of things as we saw before. Everything is going to be completely different in some way, shape, or form. So we need to figure out what does that look like, and we need creative and imaginative minds to help us kind of define what this new reality is, and hopefully, we can make some significant improvements as we move forward as well. So our new normal is pretty much summed up like this. It's going to be remote everything still. And I don't know about you, but I've pretty much been in every single one of these categories. We've had, what's interesting for me personally is the telemedicine side of things. Doctors were very, very hesitant before to do any sort of telemedicine. You had to do any sort of private stuff to do any of that. But I've had three doctor's appointments over the phone and video conference since this started. So anything's possible. That was always an industry that was going to be challenging in this space due to privacy and other concerns. So obviously there's room for opportunity in all of these things, but I'm sure all of us have shared this opportunity to go through these various aspects of remote everything. So I wanted to talk just a few quick slides around each one of the different types of remote things that we need to consider generically if we're trying to enable these scenarios. So the first one is basically productivity. And we've all been talking about productivity for many years. We've all had our Microsoft Office or other tools to enable us to do these sort of things. But it really is interesting over the past few months where people are truly understanding what it means to be productive and using the technology to do so, whether it be video conferencing capabilities and using the video as a way to be able to see and understand and listen to body language and be able to use tools beyond just their basics. We're seeing a huge push to leverage the technology in a productive way. In order to close some of these boundaries that this remote work has done. So definitely an interesting space where we can help make some influence on. Managing secure access and data. This is especially interesting. My brother-in-law works in the public sector space and very much a in-person type field. They didn't have the capabilities to support the secure access to data remotely, or if they did, they're very older type patterns and processes, very VPN oriented, very file share oriented, and they're having troubles to doing so to get access to their data remotely. So a huge opportunity there from a cybersecurity and overall security aspect to be able to continue to run the business as they go forward. From a process perspective, this is also really interesting because there isn't the usual process. I know in the public sector space they're very much into paper-based traditional workflows, and there's a huge opportunity to take advantage of quick technologies like Power Apps platform or others, and to be able to just quickly create and manage a business process. And we're seeing a lot of companies ask us about how to do this because they don't have time to code a solution. They need something that they can rapidly build a solution rather than code it from scratch because it's just too expensive and too long to do so. So how do we support our businesses to enable these workflows and do the appropriate sign-offs and all the things that still need to happen, but be able to develop things at a very rapid pace? So definitely a huge opportunity in that area. There's also the sales and service. Just on the weekend, I was actually looking to enable a new feature on my alarm system at home. I transferred to a new system and I was trying to understand how things were working. And, the salesperson was using, either some sort of chat tool or group chat to be able to find out, usually it's a call center, something to that effect. Where everyone's working at home now. So there's new ways to deliver expectations, whether it be selling or in service fields to do so. So we need to be able to develop the technology to enable this collaboration and be able to offer the same level of service that our customers are expecting, but in new ways of doing so. So these types of scenarios are very much relevant in today's world. And lastly, something that's really key to my heart as a developer is the ability to enable developer productivity. As I mentioned off the top, I've been working in the IoT space for automotive, and my customers for the past 5-ish years have been to the tier 1 automotive companies that we all know around the world. They're connecting their vehicles to the cloud to enable a whole bunch of scenarios around predictive maintenance, gamification, just being able to do alerts and service warnings, and if the airbag goes off, then to be able to do some extra stuff to help make sure their safety of their customers, those sort of things. And my current customer is starting up a whole new division because in the automotive space, they're very much very traditional waterfall type things, and they just can't keep up with that speed of software development of some of the newer technology companies in this field. And this new company that just formed within that group is just hired 80 people in a matter of 2 months. And of course, COVID's been lasting longer than 2 months, so they have yet to actually have a physical face-to-face to meet them. So all they know is them by their faces on Teams, and trying to use the tool set to enable, live debugging between teams remotely, pull requests and whatever else are necessary. So developer productivity in a space where you typically just can talk to the person next to you and ask you a question is hugely important to do. So these are the types of things that if you're looking for opportunities as part of the hackathon to improve or to show ideas on, these kind of ideas or areas are kind of what businesses are seeing today as some of their top challenges. And one of the things that we do at Microsoft is to we run our own hackathons as well. You may or may not know this. Every year at Microsoft, it's typically at this time of year in July, actually, where we host a week-long hackathon. And it doesn't always have to be physically in Redmond, where our main campus is in Washington State. But there's also places around the world that do this. And basically, it's a get-together where we provide our employees a way to execute on a hackathon. And it can be whatever they want, whatever technology they want. We're not restricted to Microsoft technology. It's all about leveraging the creative and imaginative minds of our employees in order to achieve some business result. And a lot of these things actually end up becoming products. But it is really inspiring to see organizations like Seneca and others to do hackathons to enable these types of scenarios, because we really do need to have our creative brains working to solve some of these problems, and giving the space for individuals to create and execute on a hackathon without being part of the traditional review processes, or just doing it as part of the community and having fun with it and trying to really solve a problem. It's just fascinating. So we do this. It's been a staple at Microsoft for many years, and we've definitely seen the field start to do in similar events like this, which is fantastic to see. But also just at Microsoft, a couple of quick things on how we've adopted for this as well, and just an information is that we've had to adjust our platforms as well. Customers rely on our technology very much. And we need to provide that seamless experience to be able to log on to your Office 365 or your Teams or whatever technology of choice you're using, and not be impacted throughout the business. So, we've seen a huge spike in a lot of our technology stacks, and we've had to adjust our processes as well to be able to approve, changes and implement things a lot faster, because, we might be great at technology, but we also at Microsoft still have, a lot of policies and procedures and safety nets to make sure we don't disturb our customers and make sure they get the most value out of our platform. Excuse me, sorry. So, we've used Teams as a collaboration tool heavily, especially lately. It's getting more and more, and it's great to see where this is going. So I know Teams is being used as a technology for this hackathon, and it's the exact same thing that we use, even for me personally, what I use for my day-to-day job with my automotive customer at the current time. So it's fantastic to see that this kind of technology is being leveraged for this hackathon, and it's really interesting to see how people are using it beyond just the traditional use cases to develop add-ins and other things to make collaboration even more. So that's an interesting stat. And another interesting stat that we've had to do, and it's hard to see. Sorry about the animation there. It's interesting to see is that we run a huge cloud platform, as I'm sure everyone knows. And we've had to do things in the background to support the capacity needed. There's still only so many servers in the clouds across all these data centers, and with a massive rush, it causes a spike. So we've had to shift resources, we move things around, we improve technology, and it's all completely invisible to the end user. They just get the capacity they need. So this is a fantastic example where we've also been challenged at Microsoft. How do we improve our processes? Because typically you can see here we added 110 plus terabits, and I had to go check to see what a terabit is, just to double check my calculations. And 1 terabit equals 125 gigabytes of data, and we've added 110 of them in the past 2 months. in terms of our capacity across the pond between one continent and another. And we've had to do that in a record time as well, and completely seamlessly to our customers. So we have also at Microsoft been completely challenged as well to make sure that we can support our customers, and so far it seems to be doing well. So just some interesting facts about how we are being impacted as well at Microsoft. But lastly, I guess the thing that I wanted to highlight is what can this group of individuals actually do, and what would be my call to action to everyone here to help with. So one is, I've mentioned a couple times, is we really need imagination and creativity right now. I think everyone in the business today is struggling to just keep the lights on, figure out what they need to do. And imagination and creativity is not as front and center for them. So we need people to focus in on what can you do to solve problems today, step back a little bit and leverage your skill in this area to solve problems. And that kind of goes hand in hand with the second one, was obviously the problem solving side of it. The ideation, you may not have heard of that. Ideation is about how do you come up with the ideas, how do you actually determine what is a useful solution to solve or problem to solve. So we need a strong ideation, and also inclusive design, especially at this point in time where we're all remote. We really need to think of, what does it take for everyone to participate? Whether it's a technology knowledge, whether it's, some sort of ability challenge that the individual has. How do you make sure that what we're building can be consumed and used by everyone? So we at Microsoft put a huge amount of effort in this area, and we encourage and ask everyone to continue on making sure that technology can be used by everyone. And I think the third one is around how do you actually deliver on value? Myself included, I get caught up in the cool tech. I love it. I live and breathe it every single day. But I always challenge myself, and my wife does help me remind myself every once in a while too, that I need to focus in on the business value and what are we getting out of it. And we can definitely think big, and that's huge. But and especially in these days and times, we need to focus in on the value and small increments of it, because we need that right now, especially. So definitely focus in on value, and leverage the cool tech for sure, but make sure that the focus first is on what is the value that you're getting. And lastly, I think the most important, I think that just stay real, right, and make sure we're using technology for good. AI for good, all those certain aspects need to be considered. I think that sometimes we evolve technology too fast compared to where we need as a society need it. So I want to suggest, how do we right size the amount of technology we have in our space? How do we make sure we leverage it for the best possible situation we're in? But make sure we put the human aspects of it first too. So these are the types of things that, from my perspective, are top of mind, and things that I encourage. And when I get asked from people, what would you advise as in career advice? These are the things that I stay true to, and I hold myself accountable for it too as I build things. In the automotive space, there's lots of opportunity to use cool tech, and every single time I want to go build something or suggest an idea, I use these as guiding principles for me, so that we're using our technology in the right space at the right time. So those are kind of the things that I'd ask you to do, and I think in summary, we're all in this together. There isn't a huge, everybody's open to ideas. There's nothing stopping us from doing anything at this point in time. Everything's on the table. It's a huge opportunity for this group to be able to participate in a new normal, whatever that ends up being. So I look forward to seeing kind of the outputs of this week, and best of luck in your competition here, and let's do some technology for good. So I'll pass it back to Mark and Osilia.
Yeah, thank you, David.
Any questions, I'm happy to answer as well.
Okay, thank you, David. It was such an amazing speech, and I think you are right. We're all in this together right now. So, yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, so now I would like to introduce you Wally Trenholm, who is a technology visionary and serial entrepreneur with over 20 years of experience in computer science, software architecture, design and implementation, dataset analysis, and neural networks. Wally sold his previous company to Research in Motion, and now with Sightline Innovation has connected complex science and business with the goal of creating a leading global technology company around artificial intelligence and deep learning. Wally is the chief architect behind the first data trust product to market, Sightline Innovation Data Trust, or SID. SID is a fiduciary control fabric for data, allowing data interoperability between distributed partners while preserving ownership and control. Wally has assembled one of the largest concentration of machine learning scientists in Canada's private sector, with the mandate of advancing technology and delivering solutions to solve global needs. So now let's welcome Wally Trenholm. Oh, Wally, are you there?
You're the presenter, Wally. You're there.
Yes, so.
If I am here now, then yeah, you can go ahead and make me presenter.
You're there.
Yeah, so sorry. Just for the record, what happened there was my power line network went out, and so I ran over to the room where the router is, and that's why you probably see laundry machines and things like that behind me, because that's where the router is. Yeah, just give me 1 second here to call up my notes. And while I'll do that, I'll just kind of introduce myself. So I'll ask for one more confirmation that I'm being heard and
yes,
seen.
yes, Wally, we can hear you. Everything is fine.
Thank you. So my name is Wally Trenholm. I am the founder of a company called Sightline Innovation, and I come to you. Well, the history of sort of me is I started with a degree in computer science from the University of Western Ontario. And then after completing that, I went to Seneca. So I was at Newnham campus the year that they built the residence there. It actually lived in that residence, and I was in the commercial aviation program. During my time at Seneca, I was always impressed by how excellent the instructors and all the entire process was. So I felt that looking back at how much I spent on university, I actually felt that Seneca was a much higher value. And so from there, though, I was in the commercial flight program and basically realized that, I can actually make a lot more money in the computing field than I can in the aviation field. And so I departed Seneca and went on to work in computing. Now I have my notes. Point of that is you guys are pretty lucky because those two industries are, very, and you can see my screen. So those are the polar opposites ends of the scale. If you were in aviation right now, and aviation traditionally has, a vulnerability. The last sort of black swan event, if that term means anything to you, could have been considered 9/11, and that industry became under a great amount of stress. And right now, a lot of people may think that, you put it this way, you wouldn't want to be a pilot. There is a great advantage to being in the computing industry, and I've thought this and talked about it for decades now. Computing touches all aspects of our lives. I actually learned to program computers in the 80s when I was in elementary school, building software to transmit sounds to and from MIDI keyboards, musical keyboards. And it's an example of how if you have a passion for music, you can work with music as it pertains to computers. If you have a passion for airplanes, you can work with the airplanes through simulator code or whatever it is. So you guys really landed, I think, at a great school as well as in a great field. And I think it positions you to be more opportunistic as the world changes around us than others. And that's something that I think, to be honest, I think you should be grateful for. I'm grateful for it every day. And as the world changes around us, you know, there's a lot more change with COVID, unexpected, significant, fundamental change to the economy than probably anything I've seen in my lifetime. And hopefully this will be the most. We won't see any more fundamental change than this. And yet again, when the world changes, computing becomes more important. It does not become less important. So what I've constructed here is 4 sort of tips on how to make yourself more valuable in the COVID world. The truth is, these are things that you can do at any time. It's not specific around COVID, although COVID does accelerate. There are things that you can do despite the COVID world. And there are things that don't necessarily require you to spend money. We live in a great time where you can learn so much on your own. Now, I'm not saying that school is not important, because it really is. The way that I've always looked at school, both my time at Seneca and since, and my time at university, is people are not teaching you things, they're teaching you how to learn things. The thing that's important is to learn how to learn. And also, a couple other things that I'll talk about here. So I'm going to go through my 4 points and sort of touch on them in how they relate to my career, and hopefully how they can relate to your path as we all, as a society, go through this transformation. So the first point is be brave. And what I want to show you here is, this is a screenshot of an application that's built on the platform that we have, that we make at Sightline Innovation. It's called the Data Trust. And it's basically for managing the chain of custody of data artifacts as they move around the world, potentially for and largely for artificial intelligence. Thing I want to point out here is that screen is basically those are bank transactions. So they show the sender and they show the receiver of bank transactions and personal information and all these things. The important thing to note is that none of that is real. That is all synthetic data, but it is generated so well that it actually has meaning, even though it's synthetic, or a digital twin is another word that we use. It actually has demographic congruency and statistical congruency to the underlying data. The faces that you see on that screen are not real faces. They've been imagined by a neural network. In the same way that you can imagine a neural network, or have a neural network imagine faces, you can have a neural network and faces that are statistically congruent to the faces that the neural network was trained on. I can also have it imagine transaction records that also hold that statistical congruency. Now, the reason why I wanted to point this out for being brave is, I'm not a mathematician. I am not, I've done relatively well at math. Actually, the truth is, for Seneca, I failed my, I got a retake on the math entry for the pilot school there. And that was after doing a degree basically in math at university. And the point of that is, like, there's a lot of deep math that's involved in what's on this screen. And I sort of understand the theory of it, but I talk about this in front of large audiences and I sell it, although I don't understand it down to the nuts and bolts. So what I'm trying to say is that, don't think that because you don't have a PhD in math, or because you did not study as an elective, integral calculus or whatever it is, at a certain level, which you can find if you're brave enough, you can learn these things yourself, at least to the level that you need to be competent in them. So, like, one thing that I know well is the actual computing stack and the operating system, down to how the chips work. That's something that I do know. But when it comes to artificial intelligence, I mean, I generally understand the math behind it because I've been studying it when, working with experts here at the company. But I don't have a PhD in machine learning, but I run a machine learning, or a fairly significant part of what we do is artificial intelligence. So, the point is, nothing is beyond you, right? You have the capacity to learn these things. And you don't need to understand everything right down to the nuts and bolts. I'm not saying that it's not worth doing that, but there's a level of understanding of topics, even complex topics such as generative neural networks, that you certainly can attain if you've got the right energy. And I believe that anyone can learn anything as long as there's will and it's presented properly. So keep that in mind, as you think about how you want to continue to evolve your skills during COVID. That was a transition. That's my computer's going out. It's gonna be upset about that. So slide 3. Skate around, or skate to where the puck is going. Technology is a dynamic thing. It's like history. It parallels the way that the world evolves. There's certain things that Mark and I have talked about, just to share a bit on history, his history. I know that he worked in artificial intelligence in the 80s. And there was a lot of people who thought artificial intelligence in the 80s was going to be a big thing. And if we actually had the computing power, it might have been. The point is that there's a certain way that things evolve in the technical industry if you study it for a long period of time, like I have and like Mark has. And sometimes you can make guesses about where technology is going and try to put your resources, your time, into being there when it gets there. And it's kind of an interesting game to play, but and you don't have to play it necessarily in the broad sense right now, but there are key things that are going on in the tech ecosystem that I think are important for you to understand, and will give you a little bit of an idea about what I mean to skate where the puck is going, which is a hockey term. So for people who are not hockey people, and I am not, that might not mean as much as it does to others. I'd like to point out one word on this slide, and my highlighting doesn't work. Kubernetes. Kubernetes will become the industry de facto standard for enterprise infrastructure over the next 5 years, perhaps 10. I'd argue that that's already the case, but people who invested in understanding the impact of Kubernetes over the last couple of years will be rewarded. Now, the reason why I'm saying that is because you get, as the timeline of technology evolves, you get these unique moments where there's big shifts and certainty is around sort of the tool set that's coming in the future. And Kubernetes, which you could kind of look at it as an extension of Docker. I wanted to point out, skate to where the puck is going. I will tell you this, and I'll be happy to stand by these words. For every bit of time that you put into understanding Kubernetes right now, that will pay back probably more than almost any other technology that you could invest in learning yourself. And again, I don't imagine that there's courses on Kubernetes. This is something that you'll largely have to learn yourself. And even if you did take a course on it, you would still have to upgrade your understanding of it because Kubernetes in and of itself is evolving. But the point is, when I say skate to where the puck is going, understand the world around you, talk to people who are technology practitioners, look at the various debates that have happened throughout time to see, which technologies have lost and which ones have won, and see if you can understand or develop an understanding of or get some advice from where you should spend your time, because these technologies and these skill sets will become hot or in demand in the short term. And from me to you, and this might be old news for some, it might be new news for others. I would say, and you quote me on it, that Kubernetes is a great example of that. It's a complex system. The learning curve is pretty high for enterprise infrastructure, but stick with it. And also, you have YouTube, you've got Wikipedia, there's tons of ways to get familiar with this technology. And technology is open. You can download it and install it. In fact, it's installed on pre-installed or near pre-installed on all Ubuntu platforms right now. So I'm not saying Kubernetes is the only one, but I'm saying that you want to take a look at developing a short list of technology that is things that you want to invest in. The third point, and I'll ask for someone to just pipe in and tell me how I'm doing on time. The third point is that you should be passionate and protect your passion. Can you guys, yeah, Mark is still moving there. So just, again, looking for time. But as you go about learning and selecting technology and conquering it, making it part of your tool set, it takes energy. And you got to be passionate about what you're doing here. If you look at it the way that I do, in which each day is kind of like a new opportunity to basically learn new skills. Sorry about that. This embedded video is not working, so I'm going to skip it. Inside this video is basically the full stack system that we use to develop our interface, which for the record is it's React Native. Certain people are interested in looking at maybe Flutter. And you know, on the mobile side, where it's sorry, React Native and Flutter is on the mobile side. On the desktop side, it's React. We use Python on the back end. Regardless of what you're selecting, you know, as you make these selections and find the gas to kind of chew through the topics and learn, you have to be passionate and basically enjoy the learning in and of itself. And you can never stop, right? If you want to make yourself valuable, those the kind of people that people like me go out and hire. And when I look through a stack of resumes, I can directly tell you that's what I'm looking for. I'm looking for people who've made good technology selection. They've committed to learning it. And I'm looking to try to figure out if they've done that. It's easy to see, but if you're making technology selection that's fairly progressive, and you're looking at new stuff that just came to the market, and you're willing to be brave enough to put that on your resume and say, I know this, I know Flutter, or I know, you know, whatever Kubernetes or whatever it is, you're showing me that you're brave enough to actually say that you know it, and you're willing to back that up through testing, you know, because you will be challenged. There will be due diligence, as we call it, on your skill set before you get a job. And especially if the technology is new enough that you couldn't have possibly learned it well in school, then that shows to me that I've got someone who's really thinking about where do they want to place their time and resources in learning. They're obviously passionate because they had to go beyond what they learned in school and demonstrate that they can learn things themselves. And their technology selection, it's not like when we look at technology selection, we're trying to figure out like, you know, do they like the stuff that we like or whatever? That doesn't really matter. But is there a sophistication? Can they explain why they wanted to go and learn this technology? And I'll give you guys a really cheap hackery trick, which is probably not insightful, but honestly, if I want to think about, you know, what momentum and what projects, where to put my time, I look at GitHub stars. I mean, it's not rocket science. So I mentioned React Native versus Flutter a little bit a couple of minutes ago. That's a debate that we're having. I'll share with you at the company. I mentioned Flutter, and a bunch of people. Well, there was people at the company who said, "Don't use it, don't use it." You know, it's for whatever reason, use React Native. And at the time, Flutter had 1/3 those stars that React Native did. And I'm sorry, when I went to this other room, now my son's outside the door, so sorry about the background noise. If you look at GitHub now, great acquisition, Microsoft, by the way, it's really good stuff. If you look at GitHub now, you'll see that Flutter actually has more stars, or at least it did a couple of weeks ago, than React Native. What does that mean? I mean, having stars, you know, what does that really mean? It means that it's got momentum, that people are moving into that platform. There's an ecosystem around that platform. And where the stars develop, where GitHub users are going and placing their stars, that's, you know, there's an ecosystem there. And by, you know, for example, Flutter, whether or not that's going to be, you know, a great example. Kubernetes will be, I don't know about Flutter, but there's going to be projects. I'm looking to hire a Flutter programmer right now, and I just can't find them. So, you know, here's another great stat to think about. Look at the amount of GitHub stars that there are for any given thing, like the ones that have 90,000, 100,000 stars. And if there's no one in Toronto who has that skill, you know, you may find a company that's progressive, that, you know, is forward leaning on technology like us, that's pretty desperate to find that skill set. And Flutter is a great example of, Flutter and Kubernetes are great examples where there's not a lot of people who have that skill set in the Toronto area. And of course, the world's a lot flatter now because we're all remote. So, you know, I think those are good places where Kubernetes for sure. Flutter is more of a personal taste, but those are good examples where you can direct your passion. And I know I'm probably getting short on time, even though I'm not directly sure, but I'll just assume so. The fourth and final point is to better yourself at every moment and understand customer and business impact. A lot of developers, including myself, are sort of born and bred to believe that you can't interact with customers. You can't understand the business. It's beyond you. You're too much of an introvert. That's hogwash from my point of view. I mean, you know, I'm an introverted guy. We've got some of our, it's computing. I mean, many of us are introverted. And understanding business impact, I understood it through necessity after my company was acquired. But really looking at what's important from a customer, whether it's this smart city project that I was going to talk about with the city of Toronto. We're doing some things in agriculture with genetics. Genetics is a very fascinating topic. It has value both in life sciences for agriculture and life sciences for human. You know, these sort of domain specific things about where can I learn more, whether it's medical, you know, medical theory or whatever, these applied domains for computing. If you can pad your technology, a very progressive, evolving, dynamic set of skills that you're building on the technology side with at least a little bit of generic business understanding of the specific domain you're trying to get into, whether it's, you know, smart cities or agriculture or whatever, you'll make yourself uniquely valuable. And I'll end with with sort of one thing that I've said a few times describing myself. I'm not the smartest programmer in the world, and I'm certainly not the smartest business person in the world. But when you take the intersection of those two things, I do okay. And I think that when I see people in my own company who do that same thing, they're usually better qualified than I am on the tech side, but they try to mix in some business acumen, and they're brave about it, and they don't listen to people saying you can't do that. When you do, you elevate in a very effective way your value in the marketplace. And so I think COVID is a great opportunity to do these kind of things. You don't have to wait for your next employer. You don't have to wait for it to come up in school curriculum. You can set aside an hour a day and figure out how to better yourself and make yourself more hireable in a COVID world without cost, with nothing more than a computer and some open source software and a GitHub account. I think that if you do that well and post what you can produce with that on GitHub, I can't speak for others, but you'd end up being the kind of person that I'd want to hire. And I'll stop there and throw it back to the coordinators.
Okay. Thanks, Wally. Thanks for this speech. I think the students have been motivating right now.
Okay.
Okay. For our last keynote speaker is Lee Garrison, who is representing Toronto Product Management Association. Lee has over 20 years international experience in technical marketing, product management, sales, and consulting. Lee will present TPMA and give information about how TPMA will provide support for students interested in product management during the hackathon. Let's welcome Lee Garrison.
Hello, everybody. Let me just share my screen here. Is that, whoops, sorry.
You're good, Lee.
Is that the right screen?
I can see it. Yep, I can see it. I can hear you.
Okay, I can't see which is screen one and screen two, but welcome everybody to the Seneca Hackathon. I'm really honored to be with you today and for the next week, actually. So you have an exciting week ahead of you. As I was introduced, my name is Lee Garrison. I'm what you might call a veteran in product management, but I wanted to talk to you a little bit about the professional resources in the Greater Toronto area for professional product managers, and I wanted to talk to you about not only how you might think about product management as a career, but also what you can do to think about best practices in product management during the hackathon. And I'll share with you at the end, we have a number of experienced senior product leaders and product managers who will be available through the hackathon as mentors, and you'll be able to access them on your Microsoft Teams channel. So it's really great to see you here. I'm excited for you. I understand that most of you are students in technology, and so you'll be looking at careers in technology. And I want to shout out to both Wally and David for really emphasizing the intersection between technology and business value and doing good in the world. I think that's something that we're all passionate about, and we want to build products and solutions that make a difference to people's lives. So I'm also the director on the board of a group called the Toronto Product Management Association, which is a not-for-profit organization or association, a professional association. We reach over 2,000 product managers in the GTA. So we cover just about every technology company that has professional product teams. 20 years ago, in fact, it's a little over 20 years ago now, when I first had my first product management job, product management was not a well-known profession. There were very few of us that called ourselves that. And I'm pleased to say that now, over 20 years later, we number in the thousands in the GTA and all over the world, and have become a very critical part of many technology companies and bringing new products to market. I've been a vice president, a CMO. I've been an entrepreneur and founder a number of times. So I want to share with you some of my perspectives on product management. So the first thing I want to say is that you may have heard this before, but there's a huge risk of failure in bringing new products to market, and especially for startup ventures. And so, the reason for that, we believe, and based on some of the data that has been shown, is that a significant number of ventures fail, or products that are launched fail because they have built a product that nobody needs or wants to buy. And the reason that's a problem is because we get enamored by the technology and we think that our view of the world is the only view, and we don't realize that we need to validate what we're providing to the market and that it has value before we actually make a significant investment in building it. So the question is, how do you reduce that risk? Well, there's a number of things to think about. And product management is actually the kind of intersection of all of these circles in this diagram. So first, let me start with the viability. And that goes back to some of the things that Wally was saying about business value. And so, a product manager really takes the perspective of owning the product success to drive the value of the business or drive the business objectives. But there's two other aspects that are equally as important. And the other is desirability. So do customers actually want it? Is it something that excites them? Is it something that they can use? Is there, can you reduce the friction of their experience? And then, of course, there's the feasibility, the technical feasibility. Is it even possible for us to build this? How could we build it? Could we innovate to build it? And so these three areas become really important way of viewing the kind of multidisciplinary perspective on building products and bringing them to market. Now, a lot of the details here are types of tools that would be applicable in those particular areas. And I'll talk a little bit later about how teams work with that kind of perspective. But another big concept in product management is this notion of product market fit. And if you're not familiar with it and you're interested in the discipline in the field, there's a very good book by Dan Olson called The Lean Product Playbook. And in it, he introduces this product market fit pyramid. And what's important about this is to understand that there are two spaces that you need to think about. The first is the problem space, where you're understanding the needs of the market and who the customer is. And then after that comes the solution space, where you come up with a solution. And as many of you will recognize, a lot of technology companies in the past, not necessarily now, unfortunately it's changing, have really started with the product first and then figured out who might need it. And really, in the last number of decades, we've come to understand that you start with the market the specific customers you want to serve, what are their underserved needs or pain points, and then you develop a value proposition. And it's actually fitting that value proposition to the underserved needs of those customers that is what we refer to as product market fit. So how do you know? What data can you gather? What evidence can you provide that your solution will actually solve the problem? And at that point, once you've validated that, then it makes sense to invest in scaling the product, scaling your operations, scaling your marketing and sales, all those sorts of things, because they take a significant investment, and you don't want to do that and risk that investment if you don't know that it's going to work. So product management is something that we've called up until recently the accidental profession. And by that I mean that most people don't go to university and get a degree in product management. And as Steve Haynes, one of the guys in the US that has written quite a bit of work on product management, says, everyone comes from somewhere else. And that's true of me too. But if you talk to 20 product managers, you'll find that they all have different backgrounds. They all come from different areas. And they've gotten into it because they understand the process, and they're excited by and passionate about building products that make a difference. So whether you come from a technology or an engineering background, whether you come from marketing or design or sales, it's the crossover between the business needs, the user experience, and the technical capability to build a solution that makes a difference. Now, I'm happy to also say that we are starting to see now actual curriculum in product management. So a number of the MBA programs in the US and some here in Canada are starting to integrate it into their curriculum. So as you go forward, if you're interested in that, there are probably opportunities to get involved in that. So what do product managers do? Well, first and foremost, they make choices and they solve problems. They take the time to really work with customers and understand what their needs and wants are. What are they trying to achieve? What are their outcomes that they're looking for? And then they work with their teams to develop solutions that do solve those problems. And of course, ultimately, they're responsible for delivering and maintaining financial benefit to the business. But most of all, they see things differently. So what do I mean by that? Well, a product manager actually doesn't look at a tool. So for example, a drill, they look at what I'm trying to achieve or what I want that tool to achieve in an outcome. So here, this worker has a problem, and the problem is that she needs a hole in the wall. A drill can solve this problem, but there's a lot more to it than just creating a hole. So if I need a hole in the wall, there are multiple factors I need to think about. I need to think about the speed at which the hole is made. I need to think about the accuracy of the cut, the safety of the device, the ease of using the device, the reliability of it, where can I get it or access it, what kind of price is involved, and is there any kind of support for it. So good product managers really work on defining the problem using criteria such as these before they start working on solutions. And that's often a challenge for us because as human beings, we are uncomfortable with uncertainty. And so instead of focusing on the problem, we often jump to solutions. Somebody tells you, oh, I have this terrible problem, blah, blah, blah. And you say, oh, I know what you should do. You should do this, this, and this. And rarely do you ever hear somebody ask more questions. Well, tell me more about why that's a problem. Tell me a little bit about what impact that has. And so what makes a really great product manager is somebody that falls in love with the problem, as Steve Blank has said, not your solution. So don't fall in love with your solution. Try to understand the nature of the problem, and then you'll be able to see it from a new perspective and come up with innovations. So how do we do this? Well, it used to be that a product manager was sort of a lone wolf and would work on talking to customers, write up a set of requirements, throw those over the wall to development, and hope that it all works out. But now we really understand that it's a much more balanced team that works better. And so product managers bring that business perspective to it and knowledge of the customer. They work together with designers who understand what the user experience should be or can be. And they work with development teams very closely who understand what's technically feasible and whether something can be built. And together, that's become a really powerful way of bringing products to market. Now, the skills that you want to think about, obviously, I've talked a little bit about business and strategy, but the domain knowledge is obviously important. Understanding technology and design is important, but also being able to work with specialized experts in that, and understanding systems and process, and more than anything, leadership and communication. And we say that product managers are sort of the cross-functional glue, the API that connects different parts of the organization together or aligns parts of the organization to work together. So I hope I've given you a little bit of an insight into what product management is and what sort of role you might consider playing there. I want to encourage you to look up the TPMA, tpma.ca. We have all sorts of events, mentorship programs, and are happy to inspire and encourage and support people wanting to come into the profession. As I mentioned at the beginning, we have a team of senior product managers from the community who have offered to assist you during the hackathon, and they'll be available to answer questions and help you as much as they can. So please feel free to take advantage of that. And I'm not sure exactly what the channel's called, but I'm sure that the team can update you on that. But there is a channel in Microsoft Teams that you'll be able to access and ask those questions for. So in finishing up, again, check out the Professional Association. We have mentorship programs, as I mentioned, lots of online forums. We run an event called Product Camp Toronto, and we do welcome students, so student memberships are available. And we'll look forward to seeing you in the community as soon as possible. And that's good for me.
Oh, thank you, Lee. Really, really, really good speech. And I think, please, if you want to have a chat with all of these experts, go to the MS Team channel that it's called TPMA. So there you can find these experts and ask all your questions. Thank you, Lee. Okay, so finally, just to close this amazing opening session, we would like to thank you all for attending, and also we would like to thank all our wonderful keynote speakers. Please, to all the participants, stay tuned to your MS Team Challenge. Don't forget to follow us on Instagram accounts and our LinkedIn profiles. And if you need any help or you have any questions about the hackathon, I have posted on the chat our Seneca Hackathon Gmail, also my email, and I added a link for getting the hackathon rules. If you have not checked it, they are in a Google Drive open link. Please don't forget that the spirit of the hackathon is to collaborate, help your friends, your classmates, your teammates, make the world a better place, and just have fun. Have a good day, everyone.
Aracelli?
Yeah?
We have one question from the chat. It's from Stephanie. It says, will we be getting copies of the presentations and slides? So the session is recorded, but is it possible to also share the slides? It's a question for the speakers.
Yeah, Lee or Wally, can you share with us your slides?
Yes, I'll send a PDF through to you guys.
Oh, okay. Thank you so much, Wally. So I think as soon as we receive the PDF or the slides, we will start posting them on our MS Team channels and also send them through email to our all participants.
And yes, from Lee also I see here. So that's awesome. Thank you so much.
Okay. Thank you so much, you all, and have a nice day, and see you on Friday too with our next keynote speakers.
Thanks, Seneca.
Thank you. Bye.
The session has been recorded, everyone, and the recording will be made available.